The Institute of Surveyors of Trinidad and Tobago, or the ISTT, is hosting a blended, which is physical and virtual conference themed land policy conference, Administration for Sustainable Development, from tomorrow, March 22nd, and well, actually Wednesday, March 22nd and 23rd. And so joining us this morning to talk more about it are two members from the Land Policy Conference Planning Committee. First of all, we have a Land Administration Committee Chair, Quantity Surveyor, Evaluator, and Urban Planning, Mr. Derek Outridge, and Valuation Surveyor, Managing Director of Ameliorate General Services Limited, Ms. Natasha Bastaldo. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
ISTT, Institute of Surveyors of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Outridge, I'm coming to you first. What is the organization? What is it about?
Right. The Institute of Surveyors of Trinidad and Tobago was founded in 1996. It basically was three bodies of surveyors: land surveyors, valuation surveyors, and quantity surveyors coming together. They were all established from the 1960s. And so they came together and formed one surveying body. This was to accommodate government at the time, who wanted to ensure that we have more or less a complete holistic profession in surveying. And at the time they were restructuring land surveying in particular, in order to restructure what was called cadastral surveying, or Trinidad and Tobago land surveyors, and they were going to be bringing a surveying act, which came up in 1996, Act number 33. And the Institute of Surveyors had to be founded in order to be part of that act.
Now, surveying and a surveyor, when we think about, surveying, what exactly does it involve?
Right. Well, surveying in itself, by definition, is about measurements.
Mm-hmm.
But surveyors, the professional surveyors today, are involved in more than measurements. They're more into the managerial aspects. Like, for example, quantity surveyors are more into cost management and project management. Valuation surveyors are more into land management and project management. And land surveyors are more into project development and more into project management as well, in terms of developments.
Now, Ms. Bastaldo, I'm coming to you because I'm wondering the purpose for the conference. Tell us about it. Why did we choose to have the conference now?
Well, last year, the Minister of Agriculture, then Minister of Agriculture, spoke about land fraud. So the ISCT took it upon themselves and set up a land administration committee within the ISCT. So while this land administration committee was set up, we were going through the present policy for land. And we've come to realize this policy does not take into consideration the overall and the overarching reasons for our land use policy. So the members of the Land Administration Committee, we decided we should have a land conference and invite all the stakeholders who play whatever role in terms of land to come together and let us start to let them voice their concern, as professionals voice their concern, as well as the layman, as a farmer, could come forward and voice his concerns regarding their use, how not having a land policy affects them and their day-to-day runnings.
And so what sort of items, like you mentioned a few, but give us more in terms of what the land policy covers?
Well, the land policy actually deals with the allocation of the finite resource, which is land, in terms of the competing uses. So when we say competing uses, we talk about the social aspect, the environmental aspect, and we even talk about the economical aspect. So the land policy is supposed to look at the access to land, the rights to land, the management of land, and also the use of land. So these are the things that we expect the land policy to cover.
Mr. Outridge, I'm coming back to you because I wanted to know the relationship between the land policy and also sustainable development.
Well, let's look at it. Sustainable development is about leaving a good, what you would say, life for the future generations. So what we do today will affect all those who are coming tomorrow, our children, and so forth. So if we do not today address the issues that are affecting society as a whole, and we all know land is one of those things that affects everybody. There's a lot of conflict of land. Countries fight over it. you know, states have problems with boundaries, you know, and we also have people here, the individual man in Trinidad and Tobago, fighting one another for land. So it means that land itself is very, very important to people. And we are living in an island, has a limited amount of land, 5,128 square kilometers, you know, and we have a population of 1.526 million from the last count 2019. And what that says, if I were to give away 5,000 square feet of land, right, to say Natasha, as an individual, really, if you took the land mass and divided by the population, I have taken 140 people's land and give it all to Natasha. So land policy deals with essentially land distribution. And we only have one small policy like that that was established in 1992 for agricultural land holdings.
Mr. Outridge, permit me to go off course a bit. The issue of quarrying, can you speak to that? Because I know it falls under land and that sort of thing. And we have a lot of illegal quarrying that's happening in TNT. I mean, the Prime Minister would have addressed it and that sort of thing. Does the Institute also focus on that in any way at all, or can you speak to that?
Yes, we have some speakers speaking particularly on mining, some experts, Professor Hubert Suku, and we have a whole panel discussion on mining and farming and so forth, you know, on the second day of the conference.
And what about illegal squatting? Or is that too much? Tell me.
No, that's a social aspect that we
Yes.
are considering in the conference. So as indicated before, we have social, economical, and environmental. So a major problem is squatting in Trinidad and Tobago. So this is where land that should be allocated to other uses, but persons don't have enough finance to purchase a home. So they're taking it upon themselves to squat. So yes, we are looking into that. We have the Land Settlement Agency also giving a presentation in the conference who deals with squatting. So yes, we are taking that into consideration. So we are trying to cover all boundaries and all bases with regards to land and land use.
Yeah. Well, as we are on the conference, I know that I mentioned it's starting on March 22nd and 23rd. Tell us who are some of the speakers, and of course, who is this for? Is it just for surveyors or evaluators, or who else can attend something like this?
No, we're looking at professionals. So we're looking at surveyors, lawyers, developers, financiers, and we're even looking at the grassroots. So we cater for farmers, fishermen, even though they may be using deep water within the country. But so we're not just looking at professionals. We want to hear all the stakeholders of land, their take on this land policy, because it is something that is affecting us and affecting us badly. We see it in terms of the flooding. So a typical resident could come to this conference and learn something or give their input in terms of how no land policy is affecting them.
And it's spread across 2 days. So can you give us just a breakdown in terms of what's going to be happening on the 22nd versus the 23rd?
Well, on the 22nd, we have speakers like, as Mr. Outridge spoke earlier, we have Professor Suku. We have myself will be giving a presentation on renewable energy. We have the Commissioner of State Lands giving a presentation on the first day. We have a panel discussion also on the first day. The second day, we go on, we have
well, on the first day, the Minister of Planning and Development will be giving the VT address. So on the second day, we have the Registrar Secretary of the Board of Engineering. We also have on that day, that is the same day that the mining and farming presentations will be done. You know, we also have a presentation on the second. Tobago is particularly involved. We have from TEMA and THA. They are going to be in about the mid section of the day.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So.
And Mr. Outridge, I mean, we have this big conference that's coming up. We're doing things like agriculture and, you know, mining and that sort of thing. What particular outcomes are you expecting? Are you expecting if an average person come to this, they will say, well, okay, I'm no longer squatting and they look for alternative ways? I mean, what are the particular outcomes? And anybody can take this question, actually.
Well, what are the outcomes of this is that we want to establish a framework for land policy in Trinidad and Tobago. You see, at the moment, the current policy is not working. It's creating a number of hazards. We have a number of hazard-prone areas, and those are the areas that the squatters tend to go to, right? So those are the areas that end up flooding or whatever it is. In fact, those areas are poor areas of land, and that even an earthquake, it could pose problems, for those people in terms of what you get where the soil turns to jelly, and then, But if we have the majority of people in hazard-prone areas, then we have a problem. And then the government has a problem, because it means that every single year the government has to find money to reimburse people. If people farm in hazard-prone areas and it's flooded, then you have to reimburse them every single year. Then that's taxpayers' money going down the drain, and then that's the future that is coming up in Trinidad and Tobago. Those monies that were supposed to provide facilities for them, is not being used in the correct way. So a proper land policy for Trinidad and Tobago is critical at this stage for the sustainability of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, one thing I didn't hear you mention before, and forgive me if it was, but I don't think I heard it, marine life. While we're dealing with land, are you going to be talking about marine at all during the conference?
Yes, we have Dr. Michael Sutherland giving a special presentation on marine aspects. Because we have to understand that we have about 369 kilometers of coastline, and there are different uses that can be put to the coast and the sea. And there are a number of hazards that we have on the coastlines, especially now with global warming, sea level rise. They have a number of communities that could be at risk.
Now, one of the things you mentioned, Mr. Outridge, was those hazardous areas. Coming out of the conference, is there going to be an understanding that you shouldn't build here, or is it going to be, how can you build here? How can you put up a structure here, although this area might be prone to flooding or earthquakes, as you mentioned?
Well, I can tell you there's a lot of research and development going on in that at the University of the West Indies. The Department of Geomatics Engineering, which was previously Surveying and Land Information, they are doing a lot of work on hazard-prone areas, and the kind of if there's a 1 meter rise, in the sea level, what are the areas of Trinidad and Tobago that are going to be impacted? So they have a lot of studies in that. And they're doing, they also have inside of the Department of Civil and Environmental Management, a coastal zone management MSc course in which the whole aspect of coastal management is being taught.
How do you become a surveyor, Mr. Outridge? Because I think this was never on my career path. I'm going to admit it, right? But you're making it sound so very interesting. I mean, how do you become a surveyor? What sort of path? Why are you laughing? What sort of path can you take to get something like this?
Because a lot of us ended up in surveying, not knowing we were going to surveying. No, it's right. For example, it's only about 40 years now that the Department of Geomatics Engineering was established at the University of the West Indies. So you would see before that, and I'm a lot older than that, we didn't know much about surveying, but that department has now put surveying a little bit on the map.
Right.
But we have many types of surveyors. We have quarrying surveyors, land surveyors, valuation surveyors, building surveyors, marine surveyors. But the basic way of doing it is that you do a degree.
Right. Any degree, or should it be project management, that sort of thing?
Well, the project management
But Bastaldo's like, nope.
No, it's not any degree. Degrees are specialized in the surveying.
Yes.
I did my degree in quarrying surveying at University of Reading in the UK.
Okay.
There isn't a quarrying surveying degree locally. And only in those days, it was only like UK or Canada, you could have done quantity surveying, Valuation surveying, now it's done through the BSc in land management at the University of the West Indies. But you can start as an apprentice, and you can do online courses now that would get you the qualifications that you require to become a surveyor. And then you do what you call your professional competence.
Is that like an on-the-job training kind of thing?
Yes,
okay.
like on-the-job training in which you have to work under a senior surveyor, and learn the ropes.
Learn the ropes.
So to speak.
Ms. Bastaldo, I think you have a story to tell.
Well, I started off, as Mr. Outridge said, in business and environmental, and then ended up by chance in the valuation field. I didn't even know that was a feel. People be like, so what valuers do? We value property, property tax,
Yes.
to buy, to sell, for people who want bail, simple
Yes.
things like that. And these are things that people don't even consider. So yes, it was by chance. And the Institute of Surveyors is actually holding a day of surveying, catering to schools
Ah. So
in
tell us quickly
April,
when it's in April.
April the
Yes.
21st.
All right.
Because students don't know that surveying is a field, and it is a
Exactly.
very nice field, especially if you're like
Now
the
quickly,
outdoors.
before we go, just remind us where we can go to get more information about this particular conference.
You can send an email to info@instituteofsurveyors.com. There's a Facebook page, Institute of Surveyors, or you can call 468-3358, and you can get further information on the conference.
I think this was a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for coming in. All the best for the conference that begins on Wednesday into Thursday. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you very
us.
much.
Yeah, the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.
Catch our March Madness sale at dbesttoys.com.